still believe that the business of moving freight is about who can provide the best service at the most competitive price. And the way you provide the best service, first and foremost, is by having the best people.
This episode is brought to you by Isometric Technologies, ISO, the ultimate freight broker's secret weapon. With ISO, you'll have access to industry-wide service performance benchmarks, dynamic carrier and customer scorecards, and powerful analytics so you can understand your service strengths, address your weaknesses, and differentiate your carrier network from the competition. To learn more and get started, visit iso.io today. Receive $200 off your ticket at Manifest using our link today. We are excited to once again partner with Manifest for their upcoming event, Manifest Vegas, from February 5th to 7th, 2024. Dubbed the world's largest global supply chain and logistics tech gathering, it promises a unique blend of Fortune 500 supply chain executives, fresh startups, and tech pioneers. Be among the 4,500 plus supply chain innovators, and remember, by using our exclusive link, you can save $200 off your ticket. Don't miss out.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Freight Caviar. We're here with Geoff Anderman, President and COO of STG Logistics. We're going to talk about Geoff's story, STG's story, the BDS acquisition, and a lot of other fun caviar topics. So join us for the trip. Let's roll.
Cool.
Geoff, Paul, I know you have a great intro question, so I'll let you guys go.
Well, I just want to start off, Geoff, thanks for having us here.
Thanks for having me.
I guess, I'm not sure, are these the headquarters of STG Logistics in Bensenville?
This is our corporate headquarters, correct?
Corporate headquarters, yes. Okay. And it's in Bensenville, Illinois, correct. Right next to the airport.
That's correct.
Yeah, a lot of warehouses around here. So thanks for having us. Can you briefly introduce us to your kind of career and how you got into this whole world of logistics?
Yeah, sure. So probably not unlike many folks, I kind of stumbled into it, right? So I started my career, believe it or not, as an attorney here in Chicago for a large law firm representing private equity clients in their M&A activity, right? And did that for a couple years before the great financial crash and quickly realized I didn't like just being the guy who documented what everybody else was doing to make things happen. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be the guy doing some of that stuff, right?
The great financial crash, you're talking about 2008?
2008, yep,
okay.
yep, 2008, 2009, exactly. Maybe I'm dating myself a little bit with that term.
No, it came up a couple times
Yeah, so
I mean, that's all our audience, so we're all like audiences between 20 and 55, I'm guessing. Demographic?
I can confirm I fit in that.
Somewhere.
Yeah. So I had the opportunity to jump to a private equity fund that happened to be one of the clients of the firm that I worked for as a practicing attorney. And that firm was Wind Point Partners, which is a PE firm based here in Chicago. Does a lot of middle market investing across kind of all verticals, but they also do a ton in the transportation and logistics space. Okay. So spent 3 years at Wind Point, kind of learning how to be a finance investment professional, kind of on the job, candidly. Thrown into the deep end of the pool and kind of figured out how to swim pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. What does that look like briefly? Is that you going to companies and saying, hey, are you guys thinking about selling?
Yeah. I mean, yes, it's that. It's you're often brought opportunities by investment bankers who are out marketing businesses for sale. Okay. But when you're at that level, which was, I was an associate, right? You're crunching a lot of numbers and spreadsheets and, doing analysis and asking questions of the management team and digging into the business and understanding, is it a good investment or not? Right?
Love it.
Due diligence.
Yeah.
Yes.
If we get time in a little bit, I'd love to hear what they look for.
We should do the due diligence of how BDS looked like maybe.
Absolutely.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Happy to do that. Spent 3 years there doing that, learning how to do all that fun stuff. Not unlike my decision around pivoting out of law, wanting to go, hey, I don't want to just push paper around. I want to actually be part of making things happen. I realized like, hey, we're doing all this stuff to look at these businesses, to analyze them, to ask tough questions of the management team and all that stuff, and tell them, hey, we need a plan for how you're going to take this business from 10 million of earnings to 50. But then we didn't actually do anything to help them do that, right? And so I wanted to sort of, for lack of a better way to say it, I wanted to see kind of and help make the sausage, see how it was made and help make it, as opposed to just being like, hey, it'd be a good idea if you guys made a sausage, right? So
sure. Is that because maybe you were seeing some inefficiencies? Or
no, it's just like honestly, it's just like you sit there and you ask all these difficult questions and you try to you hold people accountable to creating a plan and executing against it. It's like it's hard, right? Like it's very easy to sit there and put it on a PowerPoint slide and say we're going to grow this and we're going to do this and we're going to acquire that and all that. But to actually execute is a whole different animal, right? Right. And you guys know, right? You're starting stuff, starting businesses, running businesses, right?
That's right.
Getting people to do kind of what you need them to do and bought in. That takes effort, right? And persistence. So I wanted to get in some operating experience. And I had the opportunity at that point in time to join a company called Infinity Product Group, which is a retail import and distribution business that was basically designing consumer products, apparel, sourcing them from overseas and low-cost manufacturing locations in Asia and the like, and selling them into mass market retail, so customers like Walmart and Dollar General and Target and all that stuff. And so I joined that business as the CFO. We grew it. We had some work to do. We had to build some infrastructure, and then we grew it. And I ended up, selling my equity position in that business and looking for something new to do. Right?
Interesting.
And so at that point in time, reconnected with WinPoint, and they introduced me to a company called Dicom Transportation Group, which is a company in their portfolio at the time, another portfolio company that they had in the transportation logistics space. And I joined them as Chief Strategy Officer in 2016, I believe.
Okay.
We ended up at Dicom selling a small division to what at that point in time had just been acquired by WinPoint, which was a company called St. George Logistics. When we sold that business from Dicom to St. George, I joined St. George. St. George is now called STG Logistics.
That's what the
yes.
ST out.
Yes.
Okay. St. George Logistics.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And
yes.
why was it St. George Logistics?
I believe that the original warehouse that was opened up as the first warehouse of the company was on St. George Street.
Okay. Cool.
So it's
straightforward.
It's creative and exciting as that is.
Sweet. No,
in New Jersey, that was, right?
In Kearney, New Jersey.
In Kearney, New Jersey.
Correct.
But you were doing all of this in Chicago. Your entire story is the setting's Chicago.
Correct. Yes. Correct.
Well, you were born and raised in St. Louis.
I was born and raised in St. Louis, but my professional career has been almost entirely in Chicago.
College in Chicago?
College was in St. Louis at Washington University in St. Louis.
And then first job in Chicago?
First job in Chicago with a 3-year stop in Los Angeles for law school.
Okay,
Nice.
Cool.
Yep. So joined what was then St. George, now STG, and became the interim CFO shortly after I landed. Ultimately became the permanent CFO, and then became the president and CFO at the end of 2019. I'm sorry, the end of 2020. And then we did a very, very large acquisition. In March of 2022, we bought the intermodal division of XPO Logistics.
Ooh, wow.
Now that at that point in time, that acquisition,
XPO?
Of XPO, So that was a very large acquisition. We closed that in March of 2022.
Can I slow us down on that a little bit? What made you guys want to buy the intermodal?
So
and intermodal, that's like a lot of modes of transportation, right?
Yeah. So our primary business in intermodal is really two things.
Okay.
One is drayage. Right? So which is moving containers
from port to warehouse or railroad to warehouse.
Both. Yes.
Okay. And that's one little piece of the bigger puzzle, which
Correct.
is called intermodal.
Correct.
Okay.
So we have that drayage component of that business, and then we have The other thing that jump to mind most when you talk about intermodal transportation, which is you provide a door-to-door service in a domestic 53-foot intermodal container over the rail.
Hey there, amazing listeners. If you're enjoying what you're hearing on our podcast, we need your support. It will only take a moment, but it would mean the world to us. Please make sure to hit the like button on this video, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to share with one of your friends that would enjoy our content. Your engagement helps us reach more people and bring more awesome episodes to you. Thanks a million, and thanks for being part of the podcast community.
I might have to reword that from my
it's okay.
simple mind.
So think of a large shipper contracts with us.
Okay.
We say, hey, we've got a container fleet we own and operate 15,000 of these domestic 53-foot intermodal containers.
Understood.
Okay. We contract with the shipper.
Okay.
And they say, hey, we're going to use you on this lane. We need you to get stuff from LA to Chicago.
Okay.
Right. Customer tenders us a load. We dispatch a dray driver.
Okay.
They come to wherever the customer tells them to go with an empty container, one of our containers.
Okay.
It gets loaded, right?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Is it your company truck also picking them up and your company driver?
It's an independent contractor driver. Yes.
Got it.
Yes. And it gets loaded there. Container gets sealed. Our driver takes it to the rail ramp, right? Gets dropped at the rail ramp.
Yep.
And then it goes on the rail.
She gone.
Arrives here in Chicago, right? One of the rail ramps, all throughout Chicago. At that point in time, one of our drivers in this market, dispatch comes, picks it up, says, hey, shipper, you told me that this container needs to go to Sugar Park, right? And then they deliver it there.
Boom.
Yep.
And you guys are massive. Like, just to get the scope, like, Paul, he was telling me a story about, like, we're meeting with STG today. And, like, I was looking at, where were you looking?
Well, I was at a railroad crossing, stopped because there's a cargo train. And, you see the JB Hunts, you see the Schneiders.
Yep.
And all of a sudden all these STG logistics containers.
Yep. So that's what I was just describing.
Yeah.
So we've got 15,000 of those.
Wow.
Okay. And then, so when you acquired XPO, were you already on like the rails then?
Correct. So the business we bought from XPO was that business.
Yes.
Right. So when we bought it, they had 11,000 containers.
Okay. So you took those 11,000.
Yeah, we took those 11,000.
Okay.
We rebranded them from XPO to STG.
Sure.
And then we've added 4,000 addition to that since the time of acquisition.
Do you know why XPO wanted to sell that division?
Yeah, I mean, so XPO, I think it's fairly well known publicly, right? So they've taken their business and they split it up into a couple different pieces, right? And so I think, call it 18 to 24 months ago, they made the decision to say, hey, we think we're better off kind of splitting up into 3 different businesses, and we think the stock market will value this business a little bit more, and this business a little bit more, and this business a little bit more, as opposed to valuing the whole thing at a little bit less.
Okay.
Right?
Under one umbrella.
So they split it up, and they split off their contract logistics business into GXO. They split off their freight brokerage business, their truck brokerage business into RXO, and then they left the pure LTL business is XPO still.
So they're not doing any intermodal right now?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Got it. Christian, you were going to say
No, I was just, you asked the exact question.
Okay, got it.
That's a huge opportunity for, like, the timing, like, played out well, and that you guys were positioned in the right spot to catch that opportunity.
How big of a business was it that you were acquiring? Like,
I'll just give you fleet size. So the 11,000 containers, which is now 15.
Okay.
And then we have roughly 2,700 dray owner-operators working for us throughout the United States.
Very cool. And that was March 2022?
March 2022.
And that's, you're telling us, because you're then CFO and
I was
president?
CFO at the time, president CFO at the time.
And then you made this huge acquisition.
Correct.
Were the numbers announced for how much?
I think it's publicly announced how much we paid for it. Yes. So you can find that out.
Okay. I'll put it in the podcast. Okay, awesome. So then, what happened after you acquired XPO?
Yeah, so we acquired XPO's division. And
Yeah.
remember, that's an important word, division, right? So XPO, as you know, very large company, has obviously split off into a couple different separate companies at this time, which are still
massive.
Each one of them is quite large. But XPO had built a big shared services infrastructure to help support all these different businesses. When I say shared services, I'm talking about the kind of the finance and accounting and treasury and cash management and all that. Well, we just got an operating division, right? We didn't get any of that back office stuff, right?
You didn't get people.
Correct. Yeah, we got all this people. We got all the people in the business, right? The folks moving the freight day to day.
Got it.
And we got, and with some exceptions, we didn't get anybody to.
The money side.
The finance, like the real estate. We got some HR folks, but So we.
How does the negotiation of that caliber look like go down? Are you comfortable talking?
No, I mean, listen, it's.
Is that like a 1 year long talk?
Yeah. No, so it moved quickly. It moved quickly because XPO had their plans for all their other businesses that they were working through.
Yeah.
And to their credit, they've done a lot of M&A. Mergers. They've done a lot of acquisitions.
Mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah, and so they've been through this before, so they knew what
they knew the process.
They knew what needed
they
to
knew
happen.
what they wanted.
Exactly.
You knew what you wanted, and you guys were able to make it.
Exactly. But This business, like I said, didn't have back office. It was embedded in their financial and accounting system, so we had to extract it, right? And obviously they were partners with us in doing so. But that's what I spent most of my time on as president and CFO from call it March 2022 to the end of 2022. Was helping separate that business from XPO and then get it into the STG kind of umbrella.
Got it. And then after that happened, in 2023, you started looking at BDS, Best Dedicated Solutions.
Yep.
I'm guessing that was right immediately after you finished kind of working on the.
Yeah. So so fast forward to end of 2022.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to transition into the chief operating officer role. We identified an outside CFO, brought him in, someone that we knew well from our network, and so we now have another
a solid team.
Right, and now we have a broader team. Right, it's a bigger business.
Because you're not playing alone. I mean, you
Correct.
can't play this game alone.
No, 100%. And so he joined us. Call it in like January of 23.
Okay.
And then I transitioned to the COO role, and so I have operational leadership responsibility for the intermodal division business that I mentioned, drayage business, the legacy STG business, and we identified a gap in our service offering where we knew we wanted to be able to go out and sell a complementary over-the-road solution to customers that we already have or that we are out seeking who are using us for, call it intermodal and drayage primarily.
And how did you arrive at that decision where you saw that, I guess, need to go and buy an asset-based broker?
Yeah.
Like,
So,
were the customers basically knocking on your door saying,
correct, yeah.
We need this type of service and we want to work with you guys?
Yes, so we have existing customers that were looking for OTR solutions to complement what we were doing for them already.
Okay.
We also knew that there are prospective customers out there who are looking for transportation providers who can provide holistic solutions, right? So we didn't want to be thought of as just, hey, you're just an intermodal guy, right? Hey, I come to you if I need to move something over the rail, which is probably only 10 or 20% of my network, and I've got this other, 80, 90% over here that I go to any number of over-the-road carriers, whether they're asset-based or non-asset-based. Right? So we wanted to just expand our scope a little bit, or our share of our customers' wallets, and we thought that adding a non-asset-based kind of broker capability would be the right way to do that.
Yeah. So one day you just decide.
Well, before you came here, Geoff, you kind of mentioned how you get all these RFPs.
Yep.
And you were only able to quote
Yep.
like the 10 to 20% of them.
Yep.
And you wanted to quote all of them.
Yep.
And
opportunities knocking. Yeah.
So you kind of set out to acquire brokerage. That was the mindset, right?
Correct.
You didn't think of starting your own brokerage. You wanted to acquire one.
We considered it. Candidly, we considered it, but I think we felt like doing a cold start would take longer than we wanted to. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So what's the story behaan acquiring BDS? I
Sure.
want to hear like all of it. So, like, how did that come around?
Sure. Yeah. So
did you guys to start? Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off. But what I wanted to say is, did you guys realize? Oh, you guys realized that you needed to build a brokerage. You needed a brokerage because your customers were asking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you
Could
start
you
looking.
start from the point at which you knew we're going to go and acquire an asset-based brokerage. How do you go about like starting that search?
Not asset-based.
non-asset-based.
Yeah.
BDS, I thought BDS
They have some trailers. They do have
Okay,
some
so
trailers.
this, technically, even though they have trailers, they're not considered an asset.
Yeah, I mean, you could say
guess
asset light.
Asset light.
To you, that was not like a big selling point when you wanted to buy them. You're like, okay, you're really a 3PL. That's what
Correct.
I was.
Correct.
So how do you go about starting that search for who to acquire?
Yeah. So So we made the decision, obviously, to your point, that this is something we wanted to do. We reached out to our network, inclusive of myself, Paul Svinland, who's the CEO of STG, my boss, who is probably one of the most well-networked people in the industry, I would say. Most well-networked people I've ever met, candidly. We used some of those kind of avenues to go out and look for, are there folks that we could bring in who could start something from scratch, right? Or B, are there other opportunities for, are there introductions that can be made to people who might be looking to sell a brokerage or partner with someone or whatever. So we did that, and then obviously we have private equity owners who are in the business of receiving inbound marketing around businesses that are for sale all the time. Like that's a big part of what they do every day. So we said, hey, can you help us start to look around and see if we can find something that would be a good fit? This is roughly what we're looking for. And then we start having those conversations and seeing what's out there.
Start meeting with the owners of these companies.
Correct.
What were you looking for? Like maybe was there like a metric in revenue you were looking for? Like number of customers? Is there something like that?
Yeah. I mean, we were looking for something that maybe was, I would say, north of kind of 30 to 40 million of revenue.
Okay.
So that it had some critical mass, so to speak, right? Because if you think about the kind of customers that we're going after, this is part of the reason why we didn't think a cold start would work. Was you've got to be of a certain size to be able to service some of these big network RFPs, right? And that's not to say that a cold start you couldn't figure that out, but we want
longer.
And we need to walk in and have a certain level of like credibility and scale day one, right? So we were looking for something bigger than that, but we didn't want it so big that candidly it reached a certain valuation that was beyond what we were really wanting to pay right now, and then B. We view it as, while it's a really valuable business to us, it's a complement, right? So we didn't want sort of the truck brokerage thing to become so big that it was like kind of overshadows everything, right? So that's kind of how we thought about it. So we were looking for something that was big enough, but not too big, if that makes sense. And so that's how reaching out to the network, putting feelers out there, got introduced to the folks at BDS, and that's kind of how those conversations started.
And this process takes, not 1 month probably.
No. I mean, listen, sometimes it can move very quickly if the two parties on both sides of the table are sort of very aligned and transparent with each other and sort of reasonable in terms of what their expectations are of one another. So you can go as fast as 60 days. Right? But sometimes it can take 6 months. Right?
I think 60 days seems pretty fast. Ideal.
Yeah.
So how long was it for BDS?
Oh man, I think we closed in May.
Closed in May.
May of 23, and started talking to them formally. I would say kind of right around the end of the year, beginning of the.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Can you say who were like some other brokerages at that time or companies?
I can't.
I understand.
Well, having worked in private equity before, you've gone through it, and as being an associate, you mentioned that you did a lot of due diligence.
Yep.
Can you kind of walk us through the due diligence that you did at BDS and what made you like say, okay, this is the company we want to buy?
Yeah. So I'll kind of maybe divide it into a couple different buckets, right? The first is like the standard stuff, right? Which would be more like the financial accounting due diligence, right? So you ask them, hey, give us your financials. We have, this laundry list of items that we need from you. Typically, you have a third-party accounting firm help with this, and that third-party
auditing.
and that third-party firm will go through the numbers and say, hey, you told us that you got this much in revenue and this much in earnings. We look at it, and in fact, you've got this much, right? So eyes wide open. This is what we do. It's not a full-blown audit. It's more like just looking at the sustainability of the profitability that the business is sort of representing to the seller or to the buyer. Excuse me. So that's kind of one set, and that's any acquisition that is done, you're going to go through that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's a transportation business, if it's a widget maker, whatever. You're going to go through that. then I would say there's what I'd call kind of like the commercial due diligence, right? So it's who are your customers, right? Like what's going on with those customers? Like how sticky are the relationships? Are they?
It's not like you're going to buy them and
Right,
customers
right,
see ya.
right. Are the businesses is the customer? Are you growing with the customer? You know, are they declining? If so, why? Right? Like who?
Yeah, I imagine that's so like one of the most like important parts of this.
Yep.
Just being confident that those customers stay with you once you make that
100%.
transition.
100%.
Because you could get screwed really
100%.
bad if like
Yes.
They leave.
yeah
Yes.
if you buy a brokerage and they leave.
Yeah, and
it's not a real asset thing.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
relationships.
It's
all people.
no, and in
And
the
contract.
Yeah, no, yeah, but in the transportation business, the freight business, relationships are extremely important, right? And so
In life.
and in life, yes, but there's there's certain other businesses you look at a technology business where maybe you've got your hooks into someone from a technological perspective. It would be very hard for them to leave, even if their best friend on the other side of the table left.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
In transportation, there's
person leaves.
alternatives,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so it's very important to understand who's got the relationships, how strong are those relationships. Are they someone who's
So real.
right?
It's
Are
so
they someone?
true.
Are they someone who's in it for the long haul? Are they just looking to kind of take care of themselves, like kind of all that stuff, right?
Yes,
So all that's important. And then
Third bucket,
which is somewhat related to the second bucket, is these folks that we're talking to on the other side of the table. Who are they? What do we understand about what motivates them?
What's the culture
How are
of
they going to
this?
fit with us?
Yeah.
How are we
they're
going to
joining
fit?
you
How are we going to
too,
fit
yeah.
with them? Right?
Uh-huh.
That to me is
Wow.
all this stuff is really important, right?
Yeah.
But to me, that's probably of the utmost importance.
That's going to be who you're going to be working with.
Yeah.
That's who you're going to be working with. Are they aligned with like the vision of where we're trying to go? Are they motivated? All that stuff. Can we trust them?
Yeah.
And honestly, the folks on the other side of the table, they should be asking the same questions of us.
Yep. Sure.
Right?
Because like to like put it into like ancient history, it's like almost like one tribe, your tribe, your people are coming in and like, hey, we can join forces, we could go forward, but like we got to make sure that all of our visions are aligned. That
So don't tear each other apart once we
Yeah.
get together.
Yeah.
acquisitions are big like deals.
Yeah. As far as contracts go, right? So like the due diligence about contracts. So one thing that I always kind of never really grasped about how things work on the contract side in freight is that you may have a contract for like a certain rate, but sometimes I've heard that those rates maybe don't get honored, especially like if the market changes. And like I never truly understood what the full picture of or purpose of a contract was if those prices were not honored, and how can they not be honored if they're under contract? Like how does the contract itself work in
Yeah.
between?
Yeah, I think it can vary widely.
Okay.
Right? But I think from a high level perspective, when you are awarded a lane, let's say, so you bid on a lane with a customer and they say, hey, we'll give you this, we'll give you this lane, you've been awarded, you're the primary on this lane, and you're going to hold this rate that you gave us, it's going to be this rate and all that stuff. And typically the way it works is, we're going to hold that rate for a year. Right, it's kind of an annual
For X amount of time.
kind of cycle for a year, right? For X amount of time. In this case, it's just say a year, right?
Is that rate like binding or no?
Well, so the challenge that I think you're kind of poking on is typically the shipper is not committing to give you any sort of minimum volume, right? They just say, hey, you're awarded, and I gave you an estimate that on this lane I'm going to move 5,000 loads over the next 12 months, right?
Got it.
But they're not committing. They're not saying, "Hey,
We guarantee.
we guarantee you 5,000, and if we don't, then we're going to pay you to make up the difference," right? So that's typically how that side of that puzzle piece of the puzzle works. And then on the other side, I don't think that there's an expectation that the broker is guaranteeing capacity either, right?
True.
So for that reason, I think regardless of whether the contract says it or not, some folks will just say, hey, we're not going to cover the load. Like I can go get something from someone down the street that's going to pay me 20% more. I personally, and I think our ethos as a company is like, we don't believe that's the right way to do business, right? You make a commitment, you cover it, and sometimes you might have to move stuff at a loss, right? Which nobody likes. But ultimately, once you've made a commitment to a customer, you want to honor that commitment, and you want to sort of move forward in a positive way, because ultimately, if you don't cover,
word goes around, reputation's important. And that customer will speak with that customer.
Yeah. And again, they can stop tendering stuff to you, right? In which case, then you got nothing. Right. Yeah. So it's a contract, but it's
like this fuzzy area.
It maybe doesn't have as much teeth as like, hey, I can come smack you in the head if you don't do what you kind of said you were going to do.
But if you service it, the customer's going to appreciate you.
Right.
You're going to have that record,
right.
Be known for covering.
Right.
And then that's the
right. And there's always exceptions, right? Like you can structure a deal like, hey, I need dedicated capacity. Okay, let's do. We're going to cover this, and it's going to be at this rate. Right.
Can I very quickly recap those 3 buckets for any, like right now we can all agree, I think, that there's a ton of change going on in the industry right now.
Yep.
Like STG feels like, based on our conversation before and during this, that STG is kind of spiraling upwards. But there's big titans out there that kind of feels like they're spiraling downwards. And there's a lot of new guys entering the market that are like, hey, I kind of want to try a brokerage, right? There's young guys out there. And so for those guys, you said the first bucket is having your finances right.
Correct.
Having like transparency. Does that mean QuickBooks and like just being like, what does that mean exactly? Like if I'm starting a small brokerage today, how can I do it financially super right?
Yeah, so QuickBooks is fine, right? QuickBooks can do the job. I think the more important piece in all that is making sure you've got someone professional managing your QuickBooks or helping you in that regard. But then I think you're
so that things are categorized, right?
Yeah. And so you're confident that everything's flowing in that should be, and everything that's flowing out should be as well, right?
Got it.
And then the other thing I think is important is like what are you going to use to actually manage the day-to-day of booking loads, securing capacity, right? So your TMS, right? And being able to tell a story if and when you go to have some conversations around, selling your brokerage or partnering or whatever, being able to say, here's my customer mix, here's my lane mix.
Okay, the statistics.
Here's what's driving my profitability, right? I got this new customer on this new lane.
These are the margins.
Correct, exactly.
This is the volume.
Correct.
Okay, and being able to come into a talk and be like, talk about the numbers, talk stats.
Yep.
Love it.
Understand your business, understand where you win, maybe where you don't, right? Like stuff like that.
Your strong suits, etc. And that's what you can sell. Hey,
Correct.
we're good. And
Correct.
this is our Drea.
Correct.
Okay. Love it. This is our reefer. Sweet. And then the second part is having an amazing team, an amazing culture, and people that love you guys, and that even if you sell, they want to stick with you guys.
Correct.
For that transition, that stickiness. That's like the
customers
only way.
And employees.
Customers and employees.
Right.
100%.
And then the third bucket, which is the team. You guys got to be cool and actually want to join the people that want to buy you, and vice versa.
Yes.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
That's a good framework.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, Geoff, you acquired BDS back in May officially, and I'm curious, more or less, what you expect the freight market to look like within the next year or so, and also how is like the M&A side of things going for logistics overall?
Sure. Yeah. So it's actually hard to separate those two questions because they're related, right? As you'd imagine, right? But so my view of the freight market over the next, call it 12 to 18 to 24 months is I feel like we're kind of bouncing around the bottom right now.
Right now we're bouncing out of the bottom.
Bouncing at the bottom.
At the bottom.
At the bottom.
Okay, not necessarily out.
Yeah. So I like occasionally you might see something that you might think the nose of the plane is lifted a bit, but then you're like, not so much.
Actually, it stops for a little
August,
bit.
Correct.
Went up a little bit, now September.
Correct. Yeah. So I feel like we're bouncing around the bottom a little bit. We know obviously that things will get better, right? I think the
Every storm passes.
Yeah, every storm passes. It always does. Freight markets cycle. They go up, they come down, and they go back up again. I think the real challenge, and I think anybody that says they can peg it with any precision is probably blowing smoke up your you know what, which is I don't know when.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know when, and when, like it'll start to get better. I think it's going to get better slowly, and we're going to look up and we're going to say, okay, now it's starting to feel normal again. But if I told you that could be at the end of next year, at the end of 24, if it could be early 25,
It's hard to promise.
it's hard for me to say.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
So that's kind of my view. Maybe it's
Student loans also just started back up again, so
yeah,
it makes me worry a little bit more.
No, that's
What
right.
started back up?
Student loan payments,
so like less consumer spending because you're gonna have to pay off your loans.
Dude, that's a big problem for a lot of our audience too. Like student loans and we live in Europe now, and student loans out there aren't that bad, but like holy moly, people having to pay so much college debt.
I mean that's like if you got like just say like $200, $300, which for a lot of people might be more, but every week that's like $50-$60.
Yeah.
Right. So either that's less spend to go out, buy things from restaurants, or buy like whatever
Products.
When I also whenever I'm like thinking about this kind of stuff, I always like try to take a step back and think about my own behavior, right? And so I'm probably like everybody else over the past couple of years where COVID started. I went out and like ordered a bunch of exercise equipment for my basement, right? I was spending more time at home. Like that dresser over there that kind of annoyed me for a while because it was like old and beat up and stuff.
Fixed it
like
up.
it's time to replace it, right? All that kind of stuff. All that demand got pulled forward
into another area.
Right, and so now we're in this like air pocket behind it, right? And we need to get past that, right? And now I look at my own behavior. Like the exercise equipment. Like I'm not going to buy any more exercise equipment until that stuff breaks, which hopefully is not for a long time, right?
Sure.
I'm not actively looking for new furniture, right? But I am. Going out and having dinner with my family, or taking trips, to go on vacation if I can, or whatever, right?
That's a really smart way to look at it.
Yeah, and I think I don't think I'm the exception. I think I'm the rule, right? I think there's a lot of folks like that out there, and so all that means that yes, there's pressure on the consumer, but the consumer is also choosing to spend their money on things beyond physical goods, which is what us in the freight world need to move around, right? So that's kind of my if I had a crystal ball, that's what it would look like, which my crystal ball is clearly very foggy right now.
So people are.
I think everyone's is.
Yeah.
Consumers are more likely to spend money on like travel, restaurants, like entertainment, compared to like physical products, which trucks bring in.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And the retailers were over from an inventory perspective. You're hearing them say that they've drawn down some of that and they're in a better place. But I think there's also if you think about intermodal and trucking, retail consumer goods is only one piece of the pie, right? Like there's lots of stuff that's going into manufacturing plants, raw materials, components,
B2B type stuff.
all that stuff, right? And as far as I understand it, some of those folks are still trying to work down inventory levels themselves, right?
Still are.
Yeah.
So in terms of like M&A activity, right now, what are your thoughts on the current level of M&A activity in the market? Because it has also dipped a little bit, but I still keep hearing of stories of, I think, what was it? JB Hunt bought out the BNSF Logistics Division last week.
Yes.
So can you kind of talk on that subject for a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I think you've got a couple things that are probably dragging down M&A activity a little bit over the past, call it 6 to 12 months versus what it had been, 12, 24 months ago. One is interest rates, right? Particularly for private equity buyers, their ability to borrow and how much it costs them to borrow has an impact on how much they can pay for a business.
It's become more difficult.
Right, and it's become more difficult, correct. Second, and I think this is something that we bump into frequently when we're looking at opportunities, is And it's going to become less and less of an issue as COVID gets further and further in the rearview mirror, which is, okay, everybody in freight and transportation did really, really well over the past couple of years, right? In terms of, just riding the high rates, because there was so much demand and not enough capacity and all that stuff. And so there was a lot of, call it hand-wringing when people would come to market with the business and they'd say, well, hey, you had a great year in 2021 and 2022, but like, is that going to continue, right?
Sure.
Or should I be looking more at like 2019 or 2018 for that matter? So there was a mismatch, I'd say, in expectations, right? Where buyers are looking at businesses and saying, hey, I'm not comfortable that, that peak that you had is going to last forever. Sure. And you're asking me to pay you a valuation based off of that. And we're going to have to find some way to close that gap, right? And so you might have, so in that respect, there's not always been the opportunity for a meeting of the minds in terms of evaluation expectations. Okay. I think that's gonna ease, right? But the flip side of it is now we're in a very difficult freight market, and you've got sellers who are going to say, well, why would I sell now, right? Like, let me try and ride this out, right? I'm selling at a trough. Let me try and ride this out, get things back on track, get back to normal.
Yeah. So people aren't selling unless they absolutely have to, and people aren't buying unless there's an absolute deal.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's a lot of buyers still out there interested.
There's still a lot of buyers out there that are interested. Absolutely.
It's not as many sellers.
Yeah. Okay.
That's cool.
Very interesting. So, are you currently looking? You might not be able to disclose this, but are you currently looking to acquire any companies or?
Yeah. So the answer to that is like we are always looking, acquiring businesses that either expand our scope of services or complement our existing services or book of business are always, like, that's a big part of our strategy, right? Okay. So we're always looking, but we're always looking for, we're in a position right now where we're going to be a little bit choosy. How about that? Around what it is that we're looking for.
Definitely.
A little bit cheesy.
Choosy. Not cheesy.
So, how many companies? So, St. George Logistics, you mentioned before we interviewed that. So, it was a guy from New Jersey, one guy in the 80s, opened it. Then he brought on WinPoint in the 2010s.
Yes. So it was founded by a gentleman in the early 80s. He built the business up from nothing, right? And I think he originally sold the business to another group of private equity firms. I want to say around 2010. Don't quote me exactly that. And then they ultimately,
and it was $100 million in revenue then, around.
Roughly, yeah.
Roughly.
Yep. And then they ended up selling the business after they held it and did what they wanted to do with it. They sold it to WinPoint in 2016.
Okay, and that's when you transitioned to
STG? Exactly. I officially joined STG in April of 17.
That's okay. And can you tell us how many acquisitions you have made so far with or STG, because I saw right next door CDC.
Yes, correct.
Which is an STG company.
Yeah, it's either 13 or 14.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And are they predominantly based in Chicago?
No. So we've done an acquisition in Chicago. You noticed CDC, or Channel Distribution Corporation next door. We did that one in 2018.
Okay.
But we've done acquisitions in other geographies as well. We did one in Pacific Northwest, in Portland, Seattle market. We did one in South Florida in the Port Everglades, kind of Miami market. We've done two up in New Jersey, in the New York, New Jersey kind of port-centric market. And then we've done some kind of national type stuff as well.
Okay.
That is so cool.
Yeah, this is really cool, and I really want to kind of touch on this subject because you did mention that there's been a lot less M&A activity due to high interest rates.
Yep.
And I know that private equity companies, I don't know the full picture, so I kind of want you to explain it. So when you are interested in a company that you want to acquire, private equity firms take out, they borrow money, right? To pay the owners? How does that look like?
So at a very high level, set aside STG for a minute. Just say a private equity firm A wants to go buy a company B, right? Think about it a little bit like buying a house, okay? So you go out, you buy a house, right? Most people are not paying cash for the house, right? they're maybe putting down 15, 20%. And then they're going out and they're getting a loan for the other 85%, right? And that loan has, 30-year amortization, you pay interest, all that stuff. Private equity firms go out, they identify a company they want to buy.
Yeah.
They say, hey, we're going to put an equity investment into this company for some percentage of the purchase price for that company. And then they're going to get a loan from a bank or a lending company that's going to provide the balance in the form of debt. That is how they pay the purchase price, right? So let's say I meet you at a conference. And I say I want to buy your company, right? I'm a private equity guy, and you're selling your business. And I'll say I'll give you $100 for your company, right? I'm going to come up with probably $40 of my own money, and probably $60 from the bank.
Okay, and then for the purchasing price, I get the $100 and you get my company. Like, does the owner just get the money into their account, or does it get it reinvested into the business?
No. So let's say So let's say you say, Jeff, I'm selling you my company, $100. $100 is the price.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to say, okay, I'll give you $100.
Yeah.
All you care about is I show up at the closing with the $100.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But my expectation is that I'm buying your company free and clear, so to speak. Just like you would buy a house, you'd expect the person who is selling you the house to pay off the mortgage that they had on the house.
Okay.
Right? They actually own the house.
Correct.
Yeah.
So let's just say you think your company's worth $100. I think it's worth $100. I'm going to give you $100. But you've got a line of credit that you've been using to fund operations, all that stuff. That's got $20 drawn on it.
Yeah.
Right. When I come to the closing table, I'm going to say, here's your $100. But I'm going to take 20 of that. I'm going to pay off
The rest.
the loan, and then $80 is going to go to you.
Okay.
Right? That $80 is yours.
Yeah.
Right?
But okay. But many instances, like private equity would come in, and I forgot what the term is called, but they'll make you stay on to get like the full payout.
Correct. So what I just talked about is like the most vanilla structure that there is, right?
Yeah.
Which can happen.
Which can happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But let's just
to
say
secure your
right now.
investment.
Now let's just say that I'm saying, hey, I want to buy your company, $100. That's what we'll value it at.
Yeah.
But I need you to help me run it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think you have the customer relationships. You have the employees. You're running a good business. Good fit. I'm a good fit with you. You're a good fit with me. I need you to help me run it and grow it. And maybe I got something over here in my company that I already have that you could help me with.
Okay.
And, all that stuff. So then I would say, okay, maybe what I'll do is I'll give you $100. We'll value it $100. We'll pay off the debt. 20 goes over to the bank. But I'll say I'm going to give that to you over time, right? Because I want you to still have skin in the game.
Sure.
Right. If I just say, hey, here's the $80, but I still need you to run the company, and $80 is enough for you to go buy a place in Palm Beach and a jet ski and I like.
One, retire, but two, going a little darker. He could just go start a new company, pull a lot of those employees,
right,
which
or
is
do that.
a lot of.
There's usually non-compete.
And there's usually not.
Yeah.
But humans are humans, right?
Yeah.
And people are gonna do what's in their own interest, right?
Sure.
And you just have to understand. You have to put the proper incentives in place.
Yeah.
To ensure that hey, I'm making sure. Yes, you're telling me that you're going to run this business and you're going to do it, but let's make the financial incentives aligned with that. Right?
And that's also where we started this meeting with talking about how primarily you're like a people person, and identifying people's character is so important. And just making sure you don't get screwed out of something that's why character and reputation is so important.
And I'll be honest, there's non-competes, it's very commonplace to say, hey, you're selling me your business, let's just say you're going to walk away, right? You sign a non-compete for some period of time after the sale.
So you explained the part about the PE firm borrowing the money from the bank, right? And so can you elaborate on how during down market periods, why there's less M&A because of that, because of the interest rates?
You were going to finish something?
Yeah, let me finish
sorry.
non-compete.
Okay.
So non-competes are they're there for a reason, right? But I will say, candidly, if you get into a situation where you're trying to enforce a non-compete,
Mm-hmm.
you made a mistake way earlier on,
Yeah.
right? Which is like you didn't
Understand the
You
character.
didn't understand
of
the
person.
character, or you did something you shouldn't
Some
have
kind
done.
of you
Correct.
crossed ego.
And the
Correct.
Did
incentives
something
were
that
in there.
become
Correct.
Because
Yeah.
I was listening to an episode about Charlie Munger yesterday, and he
Yeah.
was like really like focusing on incentives, making sure the incentives are right.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Interesting.
And that's where
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Very cool.
Can I?
Real quick.
And then
Christian?
if I could please
Yeah.
get my question
Okay.
answered.
I don't know. I just wanted
And thank you.
because we
You are
started.
such a great explainer, and like
Yeah,
you're
that's
so
great.
good at.
I try.
I just
I
wanted
appreciate
to
it.
tie this
you.
back to Paul's original question about you were asking about like basically why maybe M&A has slowed
Yeah.
down during this period, right? And
Yep.
I think the maybe to the point of when the bank borrows the money.
Yep.
Like why?
Okay, so I'm gonna take you back to the house analogy
Right, right,
again,
yeah.
right? So think about if you were going to buy a house, right? And when you go to buy a house, and you fill out the application for the mortgage and all that stuff, and you give them your income and yada yada yada, right? And they price out in your credit history and all that, and they say, okay, interest rates are, I'm going to give you a loan. Your loan is for this much, and it's at this interest rate, and your monthly payment is going to be this. That monthly payment is a function of how much you're borrowing, right? But also how much interest they're charging you to borrow that money, right? So as interest rates increase, the portion of that you're able to pay goes more toward interest as opposed to paying down principal.
And
So your borrowing power goes down in terms of absolute dollars.
And the federal government sets that.
They set the
interest rate.
they set the Fed borrowing rate, which feeds into the kind of what the mortgage interest rates do.
Okay.
Exactly.
But curious. Okay, so
I'm rewinding that 3 times.
when there were very low interest rates,
Yep.
valuations were sky high. So doesn't that kind of like cancel each other out? Because like, okay, you have higher interest rates, but there's lower valuation. So wouldn't it kind of like?
Yes. So the expectation would be that valuations will have to go down,
Yeah.
but the market is not perfect, right? So like at a high level, we can all agree that it will find some new equilibrium where valuations will come down to reflect the fact that interest rates are now higher,
Yeah.
right? But ultimately, the person who has to agree to a valuation is the person sitting across the table from you who's selling the business.
Yeah.
And they might say, I just think my business is worth this.
Okay.
Right?
So instead of the owner getting the money, the banks are now getting the money.
Yeah,
But
well,
like in terms of the buyer, it's more or less
so
the same.
so where I'm going is when you're borrowing money to pay for something, how much that money costs you to borrow directly impacts how much you can offer someone to pay something
Sure.
that you want to buy from them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so right now, PE shops, private equity firms are looking at it and saying, hey, my like sort of buying power has gone down a little bit because debt has become more expensive. I'm not able to maybe pay as much as I used to when interest rates
Sure.
were higher, and thus, the sellers are also saying, well, hey, I think my business is worth, I talked to someone a year ago and they said it was worth this much.
Yeah.
Now you're telling me this.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of a mismatch there, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah,
Got
totally.
it.
Totally.
That's very interesting. And
Wow.
good intel.
So
Or
well
good-
explained. Honestly, amazing.
Yeah.
You're just buttering me up now.
Tom, you wanted
No, yeah,
you wanted to ask something.
No, I'm not. I'm actually not. Like I've talked to a couple people. No one's ever explained it that well.
Honestly, that was great.
Okay, so my question
Yep.
is kind of dreamy, like visionary a little bit. But like as you're talking about your group of partners and friends and colleagues, you guys started 10, 15, 20 years ago, and you guys have began acquiring business after business, growing an empire, which is every
Very
young
impressive.
boy's dream. So I'm here sitting, looking at Paul, looking at Christian, and I'm like, how would like a Freight Caviar group go about, like, is it possible for just like some Polish boys from Chicago living like, can we in our lifetime get to the point of somehow growing Freight Caviar, growing an outsourcing operation, growing a couple businesses, starting to make acquisitions, and suddenly having an STG group or the win
point.
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, listen, this is the United States of America. Anybody can do anything, right?
that's right.
I would say the comment I will make there is the following, right? So everything that I've been talking about here, right? Whether it's doing an acquisition or figuring out how to grow a business or whatever, like we're spending an hour talking about it. And you guys have obviously put a lot of effort into starting to build your audience and your following and create great content, get people excited about the stuff you guys are talking about all the time.
That's right. Derek behind the camera.
But it's like it's easy to talk about these for 15 minutes. Like what you don't see is like the long hours by a lot of people, not myself, by a lot of people, on the team in these businesses who are doing the day-to-day, kind of pushing the boulder up the hill to get it to a place where it's a sustainable business that is worth more than just the founder who's there. Right?
Absolutely.
So that's like there's no, yes, you hear the stories about someone who started a tech company that got valued at $2 billion overnight, or they're in a media business and they got their social media thing got picked up and it went viral and all of a sudden they went from 0 followers to 100,000 overnight. You hear those stories?
You're not getting that in logistics.
Yeah. Those are exceptions.
Yes.
Right. Like it you have to put in the work.
And the work is not just the work. Like a lot of people in logistics work hard as hell, more than a lot of business. Like you've got to put in the work plus smart work. You've got to be educating yourself and making connections and helping people, building your reputation, building your character,
building your reputation. Yes, I mean I look at our CEO at STG. His name's Paul Finland. He is a mentor to me.
Yeah, I felt like that's where.
But he is like one of the most well-networked people I've ever met, and particularly in transportation logistics. And you look at someone like that, and that network of his was built over the course of 30 years, right? And it's literally,
But he also had to be doing something right to build that network.
No, right. And
Can we talk to him one day?
What's that?
Can we talk to him one day?
Yeah, we'll have to ask him. Yeah. No, but I mean, but it's 30 years of treating people the right way. Taking people's phone calls. Helping them when they ask him for help. Right. Introducing them to other people who can help them. It's 30 years of treating people the right way. That's how things are built. And all of a sudden, you get to a point now in his career where I can say like, hey, can you help me? Get an intro to someone over there, and he's got like the CEO on the phone.
Happy to help you.
Right?
Yeah.
And that wasn't built overnight, right?
Patience plus discipline.
Yeah,
that's the thing. That's like where people are just the most important thing in this world. The most challenging, but the most important. If you want to build a business, like a business, you have to figure
on that
out
topic of people, I'm kind of curious, Geoff, if you could kind of like, because we have to start kind of wrapping up here a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you give us what you believe are, I guess, what kind of changes will we see in logistics in the next like decade? What are you kind of thinking like technology wise will occur? Can you kind of
So I'm gonna give you a really, really boring answer, which is I'm a big believer in that technology, right, as an enabler. I still believe that, and I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. I still believe that the business of moving freight is about who can provide the best service at the most competitive price. And the way you provide the best service, first and foremost, is by having the best people. And the best people who provide the best service are the folks who honestly are literally responding to emails within 15 minutes, right, to customers who are dealing with problems, picking up the phone, texting, whatever, to get stuff done. Because ultimately, what we are doing is we're just moving stuff from point A to point B. There can be a lot of complexity in between, but ultimately, it's all about getting stuff there on time, as damage-free as possible at a competitive price.
And like going deep into that, like those people problems when they come up, responding to them in a way that is not like yelling at them or something, or like I suppose, how do you get the best people? How do you build the best team? I know that people don't respond very well to when they're like stressed out or like the brain starts working, like you just become stupider or like in the moment when you're really stressed out. So like if you can manage things in a happy kind of way where it feels like that's probably the approach that you guys and the culture that you've been able to cultivate.
I mean, so to bring it full circle, I view like technology advancements it's just like helping our people do their jobs better. Right? I'm not focused on a world where drones are picking up containers and flying them, across the country. Like that, to me, that's
still
too far out.
That's a little too far out for me.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
Right.
Okay. Very, very interesting.
Can I take this one?
Go ahead.
How can we talk a little bit about STG and for like customer reps, carrier reps that might be interested in joining your new acquisition of a freight brokerage? If we could talk about that a little bit.
So STG in total is roughly 1,600 employees.
1,600 employees.
1,600 employees. Yep. 1,600 permanent employees.
Carrier reps, customer sales reps.
So it's so let me drill down for you. So we have a couple different business units, I'll call them, right?
Okay.
So we've got an intermodal transportation business unit. We've got a drayage business unit. We have a warehousing and distribution business unit. We have an LTL, less than truckload business unit. And then we have our over-the-road solutions business unit, which is our truck brokerage division.
Van, reefer, flatbed.
Correct, exactly. That business is based here in the Chicago area, actually in the like Libertyville, Vernon Hills area. And they've got roughly, call it 130 folks on the team there. Split up as you'd expect between sales reps, carrier sales, ops reps, all that stuff. They run a culture that I believe is kind of consistent with what we have in the broader STG. They've only been with us since May of 23.
Heck yeah.
But they're an employer that I think a lot of folks would be excited to work for. And one thing that I like about the team there and how they think about bringing folks in and talent development and all that stuff is they have an internship program. Right?
They have an
internship program. Right.
Okay.
So if someone's interested in or in kind of a trainee program, right? So if someone's interested, right out of school or not sure what they want to do next or whatever. If they're interested in getting into the transportation business, specifically the freight brokerage business, they'll take them under their wing. They'll show them the ropes, and kind of teach them the STG way.
Nice. And you said you guys are in the Vernon Hills, Libertyville area.
Yep.
A topic that's been going around, and it's a real topic now, is outsourcing, working remotely post-COVID. Can you talk to us on that a little bit?
Yeah. So we have generally across STG, we have a policy, kind of a hybrid work policy, right? So we put a lot of kind of empowerment in the managers to say, hey, you make the call on where you think your team needs to be, right? So if you think your team needs to be in the office 3 days a week and they can be working remotely 2 days a week and you guys can be successful doing it that way, that's fine.
The results will show.
The results will show, ultimately. If you think your team needs to be in the office 5 days a week, okay, right?
Solid.
And so that's kind of our philosophy.
Sweet. And is that something that's new, like since COVID?
That's something that's new since COVID, yes.
Okay.
Yep. Now, I think overall, I do think that personally, I think there's value in having some face-to-face connectivity on some regular basis. I'm not saying,
a feedback.
I'm not saying, all day, every day, you got to be in the office, punch the clock, right? But I do think there is value in face-to-face
100%.
conversations, just like we're having right here. Right?
We made that EA Sports comparison yesterday at Custom, where right now EA Sports, but like when they go competitive tournaments, they'll all sit together and play together, and like that they're just a tad stronger together next to each other than all remotely. Like there is. Like even doing this talk, it would not be the same if we were all remote.
100%.
When you're in two separate parts of the country.
Right, and I spent a lot of time traveling to various operations throughout the country in our business, and I get so much more out of just spending
Real.
an hour in the car with someone and just
Yeah.
driving around and talking about things than just like, hey, I got to pick up the phone and call you, and it's just it's more transactional, right?
Yes.
So that's kind of our perspective on
Super reasonable.
remote
It feels
versus
reasonable.
in person.
Definitely.
And the results are showing.
Yeah.
The results are showing. Yes.
Jeff, we do have to unfortunately wrap this up shortly or quickly because we do have to run. But I want to ask a final question. If anyone else wants to ask a final question, we do have time for that. But advice to young people, like let's say someone's young like us, like what would you tell us? Kind of give us advice from your perspective on life and where you've been, and who do you like to listen to or read?
Yeah. So I think the first thing I would say is I think if you're thinking about how can I be successful, like whether it's in a corporate environment, professional environment, starting my own business, whatever, the first thing, like table stakes, is just like showing up and like being responsive and being available and like kind of having a sense of urgency, right? Like having a sense of urgency will separate you from the lion's share of folks out there.
I have, I'll save our time. But I just want to talk and talk.
Two, I would say, just in terms of like how to, kind of present yourself, I would say, two is just operate with a high degree of integrity, right? So, do what you say what you do, be transparent, right? So that to me, like
The truth.
Yeah,
Speak the truth.
You do those two things, you're going to be ahead of 90+% of people out there, right? The third I would say is, commit to doing the work, right? So, I like I said earlier when I was talking about, that network that Paul has built over 30 years, like that's work, right? And so if you're looking for some sort of shortcut or, quick win or something, like quick wins, they do happen, but you need to put in the work. Like pick a path, be disciplined, do the work, reach out, pick your head up from time to time and make sure you're making forward progress, but know that it's not going to happen like that, right? And then the last thing I would say is like make sure you take time to enjoy life, right? So I'm a family guy. I've got three young kids, and it's a challenge to myself every day, every week, to make sure that I'm setting aside time to be present in their lives as much as I can.
Thanks for taking the time for us today. For us three kids.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, this has been amazing.
Amazing.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, it was a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Freight Caviar Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, or if you didn't, leave a review. Let me know what you think. I appreciate any feedback. If you'd like to have more Freight Caviar content, go to freightcaviar.com and subscribe to my email newsletter.